Imagine being locked inside a fortress of nightmares, where there's no escape, no visitors, and no second chances. Welcome to El Salvador's mega prison, a high-security facility built to contain the country's most dangerous gang members. With 40,000 inmates packed into overcrowded cells, this prison is designed to completely erase criminals from society. No sunlight, no freedom, and constant surveillance. This is where gang leaders who once ruled the streets are now prisoners of the state. But is this the ultimate crime-fighting solution? Or has El Salvador gone too far? Let's step inside the world's most feared prison. For years, El Salvador was one of the world's most dangerous countries. Gangs like MS-13 and Barrio 18 controlled neighborhoods, extorted businesses, and committed murders. In 2015, it had the highest murder rate globally, 105 homicides per 100,000 people. Life felt like a war zone. In 2022, President Nayib Bukele declared a state of emergency, suspending rights and arresting over 75,000 suspected gang members, many without trials. Existing prisons overflowed, so the government built the mega prison, Cecot, in just 7 months. Cecot cuts off all gang contact, no phones, no outside communication. But is this extreme approach making El Salvador safer, or is it risking human rights? Let's uncover the truth. Tucked away in a remote part of El Salvador lies the Terrorist Confinement Center, one of the largest and most feared prisons in the world. This high-security fortress is designed to house the country's most violent criminals and ensure that gang members never regain their power. With a staggering capacity of 40,000 inmates, it stands as one of the largest prisons on Earth. The facility is surrounded by 11-meter-high concrete walls and a 15,000-volt electric fence, making escape impossible. Armed guards monitor every move from 19 watchtowers, while advanced technology like facial recognition cameras, body scanners, and surveillance drones ensure no weapons or contraband enter. Completely cut off from the outside world, the prison allows no internet, phone calls, or family visits, creating an environment of total isolation. When the first 2,000 prisoners were transferred here, the world watched in shock. Videos released by the Salvadoran government showed heavily tattooed, shirtless gang members, their hands tied behind their backs, running barefoot through the prison. Guards shouted commands as the men were forced to sit in tight rows, heads bowed, packed together like cattle. The message was clear: this prison was built to break them completely. Unlike normal prisons where inmates have some freedom to walk around, Cecot keeps prisoners locked inside their cells almost 24/7. There are no recreational areas, no education programs, no second chances. For many prisoners, arriving at El Salvador's mega prison is a life sentence, even if they haven't been convicted of a serious crime. Many never see a lawyer or a judge before being locked away. The government insists this is necessary to keep the country safe, but human rights groups argue that innocent people are being swept up in mass arrests. El Salvador's mega prison is a nightmare designed to break its inmates. Prisoners lose all sense of time, hope, and identity. There's no rehabilitation, no second chances, and no escape. Life is tightly controlled, and disobedience brings harsh punishment. Cells are overcrowded, with inmates sleeping on concrete floors. No beds or blankets. A single shared toilet offers no privacy or hygiene. Food is minimal, often just beans and tortillas. Silence is enforced. Speaking leads to severe consequences. Guards watch every move, and inmates spend almost 24 hours a day locked in cramped cells. Brief outings are for strict checks, where prisoners march silently, heads down. Family visits, calls, and letters are banned. Once inside, the outside world forgets them. Punishment is extreme. Disobedience means dark, isolated cells for days or weeks, causing mental breakdowns. No education, job training, or legal rights exist here. Many inmates are jailed without trials, some just for having gang tattoos. The government says this system fights gang violence, but human rights groups argue it punishes the innocent too. The government's justification: Fighting fire with fire. El Salvador's government says its harsh prison system is the only way to stop gang violence. Gangs like MS-13 and Barrio 18 once controlled neighborhoods, extorted businesses, and ordered crimes from prison. In 2022, President Nayib Bukele declared a state of emergency, allowing mass arrests without trials. Over 75,000 suspected gang members were jailed, and the mega prison, Cecot, was built to cut off gang power. Officials say it's working. Before, El Salvador had 105 murders per 100,000 people. Now, it's down to 7.8. Citizens feel safer, and gangs can't communicate. No phones, visitors, or bribes. Bukele is popular, with 85% approval. Many see him as a hero, but critics say innocent people are being jailed without evidence. Is this justice, or has El Salvador gone too far? While the government claims the mega prison is a solution to crime, critics argue that many inside may be innocent. Mass arrests often lacked proper investigations or trials. People were detained for having tattoos, living in gang areas, or simply looking suspicious. Human rights groups warn that thousands of innocent people could be suffering in Cecot. Families say their loved ones were arrested without proof of gang ties. Some detainees had no criminal records, but were labeled suspects just for living in gang-affected areas. Families wait outside prisons for months or years, desperate for updates. With no visits allowed, they don't even know if their relatives are alive. The government claims only criminals are jailed, but released detainees tell a different story. One freed inmate described his time as a nightmare: overcrowded cells, no medical care, and minimal food. He saw prisoners collapse from hunger or illness, with no help from guards. Many lost weight rapidly, surviving on small portions of beans and rice. Reports also reveal beatings, torture, and psychological abuse. Some inmates are thrown into dark punishment cells for days or weeks, while others endure cells with no running water. Complaints are ignored, and escape is impossible. The government defends its actions, saying extreme measures were needed to stop gang violence. But critics argue the crackdown has crossed the line into oppression. By locking up thousands without trials, innocent people may be paying the price alongside the guilty. El Salvador's mega prison isn't just about physical pain. It's designed to destroy prisoners mentally. Inmates are erased from society, left to suffer in isolation, with no freedom, privacy, or hope. Inside Cecot, silence is enforced. Talking or whispering leads to harsh punishment. Guards demand total control, and resistance is met with brutality. Some prisoners are locked in dark cells for days or weeks, while others are forced into painful positions for hours. There's no sunlight, fresh air, or sense of time. The lack of human interaction drives many to paranoia, hallucinations, or mental breakdowns. Some stop speaking entirely, trapped in their own silent suffering. Without medical care, mental illnesses like anxiety and depression spread. Many inmates become empty shells, their minds broken by the harsh conditions. Some can't bear the torment and take their own lives, but suicides are ignored. Prisoners simply vanish. The international backlash, human rights violations. While El Salvador's government praises the mega prison as a success, the world sees it as a symbol of brutality. Human rights groups, legal experts, and global leaders condemn Cecot, calling its mass arrests, extreme punishments, and inhumane conditions violations of international law. Organizations like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch call Cecot a modern-day concentration camp, where innocent people suffer alongside criminals without fair trials. Families protest, demanding the release of loved ones arrested without evidence, but the government refuses to listen. International media has exposed the prison's harsh conditions: starving inmates, overcrowded cells, and stripped rights. Some reports even suggest torture, though the government denies it. President Nayib Bukele defends the system, claiming it has made El Salvador safer and that other countries should follow his example. El Salvador's mega prison is unlike anything the world has seen before. It is a place where crime meets extreme punishment, where justice and brutality walk a fine line. For some, this is the ultimate solution to gang violence, a necessary evil to restore order. There is no doubt that El Salvador's crime rate has dropped dramatically since the prison opened. The streets, once controlled by gangs, now feel safer. Many citizens support the government's harsh policies, believing that only fear can stop violent criminals. But at what cost? Tens of thousands remain locked away without trials, and stories of abuse, torture, and wrongful imprisonment continue to surface. The world is watching. Some governments are considering using similar strategies, while others warn against repeating El Salvador's mistakes. If this method succeeds, could we see other countries building mega prisons for criminals? Or will this system eventually collapse under the weight of its own brutality? The real question is El Salvador delivering true justice, or simply creating a new form of oppression? What do you think? Is this prison the future of crime control, or a human rights disaster waiting to explode? Let us know in the comments below.